My name is Rachel Wagoner. I am a co-owner and manager of Tall Pines Farms in Darlington Township. I married into this farm. My husband is the fourth generation to farm this land that we're on here, right off of Route 51. Right now we do pasture-raised, grass-fed beef and lamb, which we sell directly to customers. But this farm has been many things over its history. The Wagoners bought it. My husband's great-grandfather bought it in 1949 as a secondary farm. They had a cut flower and greenhouse business in West Mayfield. If you know where Smith's Meat Locker used to be, that was some cousins, so that was part of the family as well. So that's where they were at. They bought this as a secondary farm just to have more land. And so even through the Wagoners, it's been many things. I mean, we've had wool sheep here. Now we have hair sheep. There have been pigs. This used to be a place where they raised white-tailed deer. So it's just sort of, it's transformed through the generations to suit the needs of whoever was running it at the time, which is how I think most farms are in this area. Before the Wagoners, the Kane family owned it for more than 100 years, and I found some historical records and documents that said that there were, thousands of sheep on this property, which I could see sheep do pretty well in these hills. And before the Kane family, the White family owned it, which they were based in, the famous White family of this region. So before that, they owned it, and I'm sure that they were doing different things with it. The back part of our property, which touches Cannleton and Ridge Road, used to be an orchard, which is, we sort of assume it's the orchard that's mentioned in the Barbara Davidson Pig Lady story, because that would be the right area and would be sort of all the stuff matches up. So yeah, that's just a little bit of the history. It's been a lot of things over the years. This is what we're doing now, but I mean, if my children want to carry on here, will they be doing this? Maybe they will. Maybe they'll be doing something different. That's, I guess, the nice thing about this land is it's adaptable. The farm base between various people that own it in the family is about 500 acres. And it's all contiguous. It's all in one big, everything connects, and it's between sort of Route 51, Cannleton Road, and Ridge Road. I would say we're on the smaller end of things, but again, that is so subjective. Everyone will give you a different answer. Some guy with 1,000 acres that he's farming row crops will tell you he has a small operation because he knows some guy who has 10,000 acres. So what we do here is what a lot of small farms in this region are doing. They keep a small cow-calf herd. Everything is sort of grass-based. I think we're unique in that we have sheep and that we market lamb, but other people raise sheep as well in this area. The type of, the animals we have, ruminants, they do well in the landscape here. We don't have a ton of flat ground to do crops on or to do other things on, but you can grow grass pretty well here. And even with all the trees, there are certain ways that you can manage pasture and tree growth together, which we're sort of trying to do more of. So yeah, I think ruminants, cows and sheep and whatever else, they work really well here. So no, we're not really unique. We're just one of many doing the same thing, sort of hitting our customer base and our niche. We market direct. We don't sell, we don't, you can sell beef 100 different ways. We could take it to a sale barn, and then it would basically go to, sort of through the commodity chain, and it would go to a packer, and then it would end up on a store shelf somewhere. Other people sell, directly to butcher shops, then the butcher shop markets it. But we sell directly to the customer. So we do wholesale. So if you could get a whole or a half beef or a whole lamb, and you get to, pick all the cuts yourself if you want to. If not, we can help you with that. But we also do sell some smaller retail cuts, packages of ground beef, packages of lamb chops, just to sort of, because not everyone can fit a whole lamb or whole cow in their freezer. Freezer beef is, I would say, it's commonly called freezer beef when you sell wholesale and you sell directly to people. Just because of various sort of regulatory loopholes, that's the easiest way to do it and to cut out the middleman, just to make sure that, you're getting the money straight from whoever, it makes everyone feel good. You cut out the middleman. This is Collie. She's a Great Pyrenees. She is one of 3 livestock guardian dogs we have on the farm. They protect our sheep from predators. The biggest predator we have here is coyotes. But I mean, anything will snatch a lamb for a snack because they're easy pickings. So not everyone with sheep has livestock guardian dogs. We do, just because our predation with coyotes is pretty bad. I mean, one year we lost like a dozen lambs to coyotes during spring lambing outside, which is pretty brutal. And since we've had them, we haven't, I can't say we've really had any losses to coyote predation, especially like we used to. I mean, it used to be really bad. So yeah, they're doing their job. We lose animals to other stuff now, but at least it's not the coyotes anymore. So that eliminates one thing. So we're sort of a mishmash of things here. Being grass and pasture based like we are, there's a couple, different ways to do that. Not a couple, there's a ton of different ways to do that. So we started using a practice called rotational grazing, which is where instead of just letting the animals continuously graze the same, pasture and having access to all of it throughout the year, you sort of divide it up into smaller sections. And then you let them graze one section, move them on quickly to the next and to the next, and then you're letting those previous areas rest, which the rest is the key part to allowing the pastures to recover better. So we've started doing that in the one pasture we have, which we call our summer pasture. Other areas, it's still continuously grazed, and it's kind of amazing. You can really see the difference in sort of doing the two practices at once, how much better it is using in the areas where we're using rotational grazing. So we started that with our sheep. We're starting to do that with our cattle now. And we just, we're sort of expanding and trying to get more land in pasture to continue to do this more. So that's one of the practices. There's some other things that we, I'm pushing for as a person who has come into this and doesn't have any ties to the old ways of doing things, which I think is sort of a nice perspective, but also, I get some pushback from my husband and my father-in-law, and just that, we've always done things this way. You don't know how the land works. This is the way to do it, which I think there's value in that, in considering, this works well for this land. Historically. So this is why we haven't tried this before. But I also think there's value in just trying new things and seeing if they work, because sometimes they do. And some of my ideas have failed horribly, and I just, go with my tail tucked, and I think, okay, well, we will reevaluate and do that a little differently next time. So yeah, and I think that's maybe the way to go, and especially with farms around here, particularly generational ones, where you are operating with different generations who have different views on things. I think that's how a lot of farms here work. You're dealing with how your grandfather did things, or how he still wants to do things if he's involved. But you have a different view on things. It's just, you need to respect all views and sort of come up with a way to try new things without making everyone upset. I think as younger generations come in, there is more of that. But that's the key, right, is to either, if there is some sort of transition, if the farm is still run by some 80-year-old guy who won't let anyone else do anything, then he's going to run it how he wants to. But if he lets his grandson in or whatever, you get more different practices. I know there are other farms around here in Darlington, and I know of a family in Enon Valley that they have a dairy. They do some rotational grazing and pasture-based dairy, which it seems like a new thing, but really it's like the old way of doing things, and just sort of bringing it back with more science and more better information on how to do it. So yeah, I mean, it just depends on the operation, right? Everything depends on who's operating it and who is allowed to make decisions. But there is, I think there is a lot of change and a lot of experimentation happening, just in really small, subtle ways that you probably wouldn't notice driving by a farm from the road, that they are doing rotational grazing or that they're using cover crops. You just might notice their fields look a little different and wonder why, as a layperson. But you can tell that these things are happening. Farmers are always being incentivized by the USDA and various other groups to do certain practices. So yeah, there are incentives to do certain conservation practices, like to take land out of production and plant trees, and they that's called the CRP program, and they give you money for 15 years to do that, which might seem crazy. Why wouldn't we let our animals graze in the creek bottom, and why would we give up our pasture? but like they're gonna give you money for it, and were you really getting that much production anyway? But of course, I mean, farmers up here, and this is not unique, and farmers all around the country are very resistant to outside pressures, even if there is, you know, dollars incentivizing them. You know, they don't like being told what to do. So no matter how much money you throw at it, you're not going to make a farmer do something. I think farmers, I mean, this is probably an unpopular opinion, but I think some who are stuck in their ways haven't really thought about marketing. They've always just taken their animals to wherever to sell them, and they've sold to the same 10 customers every year, and they haven't thought very much about marketing. Of course, that's not everyone, but there are definitely people out there who aren't, you know, thinking strategically about that sort of thing. Like you can't just be a farmer, you also have to be a business person and a salesperson. I mean, you have to wear all of these hats to be successful over a period of time because, you know, the markets and the landscape changes. So during the pandemic, there was a push to go back to local foods whenever, you know, supply chains, the traditional supply chains were disrupted, which was really nice. And I think that some farmers thought that that would last, which it, you know, maybe you gained a couple more customers from that who otherwise wouldn't have bought local, but mostly people go for convenience, which, you know, that system is there for people to do that, of course. Like I can't knock anyone who goes to buy from Walmart or Giant Eagle, because I've done that too when I've needed to. It's just, you know, there are options. This is America, so there are options for consumers, and that's kind of what we like to have, in both where we can buy and how we can buy and the price point at which we can buy at. At our farm, we're offering, you know, we're marketing as pasture-raised, grass-fed. So we command a bit of a premium price for that, which some people don't like, and that's fine. They don't have to buy from us. There are other options out there for them to get, you know, American-raised beef or lamb if they want to. Oh, that's a tough question now because I just, it's been a tough winter, so I'm feeling not very enthusiastic about farming right now. I like being outside and taking the time to observe things that are going on, like all of the interactions of what we're doing through our management and just sort of what nature is doing on its own. So, you know, we do, as I mentioned, we do rotational grazing with our sheep and our cattle. So before I had permanent fencing up, I was moving this temporary fencing around like every day, all the time. It took forever, which it was really just, wasn't hard work. It was just tedious. Just sort of walking the line and putting up the fence and then taking down other fence and moving it so I could move my animals so that they could, you know, be healthier and the land is better and all that stuff. So that was tedious. But taking the time, being forced to slow down and walk in the pasture, when many other times we're riding on side-by-sides just to get places quicker and to do things. So being forced to take the time to walk the pasture and look at the grass and see how it's growing and just observing, you know, the honeybees and the different native bees that are coming out and pollinating the clover and just seeing all the different little bugs and critters that are in the pastures where we are also raising our sheep, where there are also, you know, birds coexisting with us and just all of these different things that are happening all together. That's really cool to see that we're sort of, I mean, at least on our farm, we're not trying to, I don't want to bend the land to our will. I want to work with it. And I think that's sort of maybe a view of farming that we're coming back to more, and I think is going to be more sustainable in the long run. What I dislike the most? There's just so many things to choose from. No, I like all seasons. A lot of farmers bitch about the weather, which I understand. People like to complain about the weather. I really do like all seasons here. So I was actually really sad when we didn't have a winter, because I think winter and having a hard freeze and having snow on the ground is important for, you know, the environment, sort of how we have historically managed things. Not that you asked about climate change or anything, but so we've, you know, things have been different the past couple years where we've had some really very wet periods followed by really very dry and hot periods, which is not what we're used to, which I guess we can attribute it to whatever we want to. But the fact of the matter is, it's the past couple summers have been very hot and dry, and I think how we're managing things now, we need to adapt to that and think more about how to manage for dry periods. But anyway, so I like all the weathers. I would like to complain about the weather, but I really can't, because I appreciate all the seasons for what they do. In the winter, since we're marketing as grass-fed, our animals aren't on pasture because nothing is growing really, and we like to sort of give everything a winter rest. So we're just feeding hay. All year, the animals need like a few simple things. They need fresh, clean water. They need food, whatever that is, and they need shelter of some kind. So in the summer, they need to have access to shade. In the winter, they need wind breaks more than anything. Like, they don't necessarily need cover. They just need a place to get out of the wind a lot of the time. So yeah, in the winter, we're just making sure everyone has food, which is, in our case, we make hay, or we buy in hay if we don't have enough. So we're just feeding everyone. We're checking water. We're making sure things aren't frozen, which that's like the big battle, is making sure water doesn't freeze. And we're just making sure everyone's staying nice and dry. That's the other key thing. So yeah, they don't, like our cattle, they don't have a roof over their head in the winter. But we just try to make sure that there are ways that they can get out of the wind and, keep their feet pretty dry. If you have any questions about how we do things and how we're living here, just ask, because there's no stupid questions. I mean, I didn't grow up on a farm, so I had to go through a lot of growing pains and learning things and saying stupid things that were not right, which I could tell some maybe inappropriate stories of things that I was misinterpreting, and then words came out of my mouth and they just sounded so stupid in retrospect, but I laugh about it now. And I'm the one running this farm now. I think it's good for people to ask questions because it gives us as farmers a perspective. Because I assume everyone knows about rotational grazing, and sometimes I talk to people and I'm using all these terms and they're totally lost. And they're like, whoa, back up. What does this mean? What does this mean? And that gives me perspective for like how deep I am in it. So I think it's really important for people, if they don't understand and they truly want to learn something, just ask. Because I think most farmers would be very happy to explain to you whatever it is they're doing in their system, which of course, is it right or wrong? No, I mean, everyone is doing something different on their farm. It's very variable. So yeah, just don't be afraid to ask questions. If you assume something and maybe it's not quite right, or you just have always wondered something, there's no such thing as a stupid question. Like, I have asked all the stupid questions, and now I'm here running this farm somehow. And if you want to ever get involved somewhere, or you want to learn more about a farm, again, just ask, because I think farmers are more than willing to sort of, most, of course, we all have our busy times, but I think people are willing to share their experiences so that people can see what it's really like and get that exposure and maybe, make if you live in Beaver Falls or in Aliquippa, or you're in one of the river towns, but you want to work on a farm, I mean, I think you just have to start making those connections, like really based on the ground connections with farmers, and start helping out on, for us, maybe when we're working animals, or when I'm, doing health checks on sheep, or when I'm moving. I mean, there's just a lot of things that people can do to get involved in a way that is safe and practical and helpful and good for everyone. When you marry into a generational farm, as I have done, you really feel a big sense of not only am I doing this because we have these animals to care for and we like doing it, it's like I'm carrying on my back everything that my husband's ancestors have done, and I'm trying to uphold that, which is great. But also, and I think people need to keep this in mind, particularly on generational farms, you need to adapt just as everyone else has done before us. As I mentioned before, our farm has been many different things. You can't get stuck because they were adapting for what they needed to do and for the future, and we will probably need to do that. Are we going to be doing things the same now as we are in 10 years? Maybe yes, maybe no, I'm not sure. You just need to adapt in a way that your farm can be valuable in the future. And valuable to your, I don't want to burden my children with this. I don't want them to think like, oh, now I have that farm to deal with when mom dies, and it's just going to be such a pain in the butt. I want it to be something that they can take over, or they can sell to someone else to be it, like to run it as a farm. I hope it'll always be a farm. I like that about this, but of course things are adaptable. I don't want to see it become a housing development, but you have to remain adaptable. That's the key thing. You can't get stuck. Just because grandpa did it that way, well, is he doing it the way his grandpa did it? Probably not. You just have to keep it all in perspective. I think we always think about farms as like just a money hole, which is why we need to work to make sure that they're not, which is why we need to think about doing things in a way that is both sustainable from an environmental standpoint and also from a financial standpoint. I think the two things can work together. You just have to think about it. You have to be strategic about it.